Welcome to Layer of the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, let's discuss Kiss's 1976 album, Rock and Roll Over. Oddly enough, I haven't done very many Kiss videos. I've been meaning to do one on the live albums, of course, for my legendary live series. I did do a Kiss Deep Cuts with my friends Mike and Darren, and that was a really popular episode. And Kiss was a band that, when I've told my story, that I had an uncle who was only 10 years older than me, and so in the 70s, he was listening to all Kiss and Ted Nugent were like his main bands, and so Kiss was really like one of the first rock bands that I got excited about and that really got into. And as a kid in the 70s, when Kiss was just like at the peak of their power, you know, everybody seemed to love Kiss. So when I've told the story, it's on back in one of my early videos about the neighbor that used to live next to me, and he was a teenager at the time. I was only like 7-8 years old. And he played drums, and his room was in the basement of their house, so the window to his room was on ground level outside, and I would sit outside his window and listen to him playing drums along to like Kiss, just like all Kiss songs, you know. So I do have fond memories of Kiss. So this album, it's an interesting album because it follows Destroyer, which was a very big selling record for them. And Destroyer was produced by Bob Ezrin, and it was very, for some people, overproduced. I personally like that kind of production. Bob Ezrin is one of my favorite producers. Bob worked with Alice Cooper and Pink Floyd The Wall, and Bob always adds a lot of like orchestrations and bells and whistles and percussion things going on, and I personally enjoy that. For some people, and apparently for the band also, it was a bit too much. So after Destroyer, even though Destroyer was a success, they wanted to go back and sort of scale it back, get a little bit more simpler in the recording, a little bit more raw, kind of live sounding type of thing. And they accomplished that with this record, I think. This is a very sort of dry, straightforward record. There aren't a bunch of overdubs. There's no strings or tons of layered vocals or anything on it. It kind of just sounds like the band live in the studio, and it really works. One of my problems with Kiss is the first couple Kiss studio records, the first 3 ones, and especially like Hotter Than Hell, the production on it is in my opinion, not good, and it takes away from the songs. The drums are badly recorded on those early records and everything, and the songs sort of suffer, in my opinion. They all come to life on a live one. But here with Rock and Roll Over, they seem to strike a nice balance between, you know, not getting away from the Destroyer production, keeping it simple, keeping it raw, keeping it in your face, but there's still a lot of energy and excitement to the recordings. So the album was produced by Eddie Kramer. Eddie Kramer would, you know, work with the band throughout their career, and I think it works on this record. So all right, so the album, it's mostly Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and Peter Criss songs. Ace doesn't have any writing credits on this and doesn't sing at all on this. I always found it interesting about Kiss, and something that doesn't get talked a whole lot about with them. I think one of the things that really made them unique was that they all sang, but especially the vocals between Paul, Gene, and Peter. Paul had sort of the clean, operatic, dramatic type of voice. Gene had the demon voice, you know, like a character kind of voice. Peter Criss had this sort of whiskey-soaked Rod Stewart-like voice. And Ace, when he sang, sort of had the Ringo Starr type voice, the sort of fun, carefree voice. So I thought that it's interesting that they all sort of had different types of voices. And on this record, they really do this really well, even though Ace doesn't get a vocal on this. So I mentioned Peter Criss. Peter Criss sings "Hard Luck Woman" on this record, and that was a song that was a big hit off this. You still hear that on classic rock radio. Story goes to Paul Stanley. he either wrote it and wanted Rod Stewart to sing on it, or was going to sell it to Rod Stewart or something like this. And he gave it to Peter. And it makes total sense, right? Because Peter has a very Rod Stewart-like voice, and he really works on this. And the acoustic guitars are real nice. And it's just a great sort of sing-song along kind of song. Very, very Rod Stewart. Like you can totally hear Rod Stewart, singing a very Maggie May type of vibe to it. Peter also sings on Baby Driver, a song that I really like. When I did our Kiss Deep Cuts episode, this was one of my deep cuts, and the other guys were kind of like, didn't really care for that song. But I like that song. I like Peter Criss's voice in it. It sounds like he's almost like distorting the microphone, like he's right on top of the microphone. And I love sort of that syncopated guitar riff. And then it pretty much breaks down with who wrote the song, sang it for the most part. So Gene's songs, he sings the songs that he wrote, like Calling Dr. Love, which, a little trivia for me in my history, the very first piece of music I ever bought with my own money was a 7-inch single of Calling Dr. Love. And I've told this story before where I heard him right before like the last chorus of the song. He does this ha like sound, and as a 7-8-year-old kid, I thought, oh, that's probably like where he spits blood. I was convinced that that's where Gene spits blood, right at that spot in the song. So Calling Dr. Love, that's a fun one. Also, Gene, a lot of times people don't talk about Gene's bass playing, and especially in the 70s, Gene was a very interesting bass player. He had a really cool bass tone. It was kind of distorted, his Gibson Ripper bass, so it had a really unique sound to it, mid-rangey, distorted sound. Really jumped out in the mix. And the way he played bass, he played it in a very Motown-ish way. And what I mean by that is he just didn't sort of play right along with the guitar riffs. He would do these sort of walking and like counterline bass things, like the riff is going up, he's going down, just sort of like a moving bass line, like a walking bass line, very Motown-like. And speaking of Motown, another Gene song on here, See You in My Dreams. This was one that I picked also on my Deep Cuts episode, but I picked it from Gene's solo album. Gene does his 77 or whatever year that was, 78, that they did this 4 solo albums. He redoes this song on his solo album, and it has a much more Motownish feel to it. He has some female background singers in it, and you can really hear, again, Gene's Motown, James Jamerson, Carol Kay, who was a famous studio. Both the Jamerson and Carol were like famous studio session players that played on all that Motown stuff that was very influential on Gene. Let's see here. What else? A Ladies' Room. Another Gene Penn tune here. A fun, upbeat one. A cool one. Then the Paul Stanley stuff. I Want You. Great album opener. I love the guitar sounds in this. Ace has a lot of great leads on this. I especially like the lead in this one. Ace is certainly not a super technical player, but he had a way of really sort of digging in with his pick, where he would do these like like just kind of riding on a single note, and he was very good at getting a lot of money and a lot of distance out of just a few notes. He had a really great feel with his bends and stuff like that. And his sound on this whole record, the guitar sounds are really great. They're really like sort of right up there. Some might say dry, but dry in a good way. It sounds like the amp is sort of like right there in the room with you, Take Me, that's a fun one with a cool sort of like riff to it. I like sort of delay, take me, and the way the vocals sort of repeat the delay thing on the vocals. All right, what else did I miss here? Love 'Em, Leave 'Em, that's a Simmons one. That one's neat. Mr. Speed, I always like that one. It's got sort of a bluesy, I like that little snaky guitar riff to it. That's why the ladies call me Mr. Speed. Yeah, it's a cool one. And Making Love, the album ends with Making Love, another sort of hard driving, riffer, all night long. Again, it's sort of the simple production on this works really well because it makes it sound like it's live, like you're just sort of right there listening to them in the control room, listening to them jam this out live in the studio. So, all right, so there you go. Kiss, Rock and Roll Over. I always thought it was a really cool cover here, the concept of the cover. And, you know, Kiss was known for their great album covers. And yeah, after this for me would be the last like really great Kiss record. I do like Love Gun, but I think that Love Gun starts to lose it a little bit on side 2. And then you have Alive 2, which is, you know, one of the great live album. And then the band would release the solo albums, and then things would really start to go awry. So for me, this is really like the last great Kiss, sort of at the peak here. I think after this, the band would start to fragment a little. I think Ace would drift off, different problems within the band. So this for me is sort of the pinnacle of 70s Kiss. A really, really great record. So let me know in the comments down below what you think of Kiss Rock and Roll Over. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.